Beneath the quiet fields and sleepy towns of America's heartland, something ancient is stirring. Cornfields sway under a calm autumn sky. Tractors hum down dusty roads, and yet deep below the Mississippi River Valley, the earth is whispering again. In recent months, seismologists have recorded more than 200 small earthquakes beneath this peaceful stretch of land. Faint vibrations, too subtle for most people to feel. But together, they form a pattern, a warning, a story of immense pressure building silently underground, along one of the most dangerous hidden fault systems on Earth. This isn't California. There are no mountains rising over the horizon, no visible fractures splitting the Earth, just farmhouses, bridges, and highways, all resting atop a sleeping giant. And history has shown that when this giant wakes, it doesn't rumble gently, it roars. Because the last time it did, it made the Mississippi River run backward. The winter, the earth wouldn't stop shaking. It's December 16th, 1811, 2 o'clock in the morning. Most of the American frontier is asleep. New Madrid, Missouri, is a small settlement on the edge of the Mississippi, a young nation's lifeline to the south. Then the ground rips open. Cabins rise and fall like ships on a stormy sea. Trees snap mid-trunk. The roar is deafening. Entire forests disappear into the mud as the river bursts from its banks. The Mississippi, the river that carried Lewis and Clark, suddenly reverses its flow. And that was only the beginning. Over the next 10 weeks, 2 more colossal quakes strike, on January 23rd and February 7th, 1812, each stronger than the last. The shaking doesn't stop for months. Frontier settlers describe the ground rolling like waves upon the ocean. For church bells ring in Boston, over 1,000 miles away. Chimneys crumble in Cincinnati. In Tennessee, a new lake forms out of nowhere. Reelfoot Lake, born from land that sank beneath the flood. The shaking is felt as far north as Canada, as far south as the Gulf Coast. It was, by all accounts, one of the most violent geological events in American history. Now imagine that same power today, hitting a landscape filled not with log cabins, but with skyscrapers, bridges, pipelines, and millions of people. Memphis plunged into darkness. St. Louis bridges twisting like wire. Highways buckling across the Mississippi floodplain. Scientists estimate those original quakes range from magnitude 7.5 to 8.0, on par with California's greatest disasters. But here's the terrifying difference. The bedrock of the eastern United States carries seismic waves 5 times farther than the brittle rock out west. That means one massive quake here wouldn't just devastate one city. It would shake an entire region. And the worst part? The fault that caused it has never gone silent. The hidden scar beneath America, the new Madrid seismic zone, doesn't look like much. Stretching roughly 150 miles through Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Illinois, it's an unassuming line buried deep below the farmland. No cliffs, no canyons, just an invisible fracture slicing through the heart of the continent. To understand why it's so dangerous, you have to go back hundreds of millions of years. Long before the first humans walked these plains, the North American continent almost tore itself apart. A massive continental rift began to form here, a gash that tried and failed to split the land in two. Geologists call it a failed rift system, a kind of ancient wound in the Earth's crust. When the forces of plate tectonics later rearranged the planet, this wound healed, but not perfectly. Deep below the surface, it left a weak zone, a geological scar that still flexes and strains to this day. Over time, the immense forces of continental drift have continued to squeeze this buried scar. Millimeter by millimeter, year by year, the pressure builds, until one day, the rock can't take it anymore, and it snaps. That's what happened in 1811. And based on recent data, Scientists believe it could be happening again. Since the 1970s, seismometers have recorded over 4,000 small earthquakes in the new Madrid zone, most too weak to feel, but strong enough to prove that the fault is still alive. GPS satellites even detect tiny movements, just a few millimeters each year, but enough to show that the ground is shifting, like the earth itself, taking a slow breath before a scream. The Midwest, for all its tranquility, sits on top of one of North America's most unpredictable faults. And because its geology is unique, with dense, ancient rock that transmits vibrations far and wide, any future rupture could spread chaos across multiple states in a matter of seconds. That's why scientists call it the sleeping dragon beneath the heartland. If it happened today, imagine it's the early morning rush hour. The sun is rising over the Mississippi River. Barges glide down the water. Commuters cross bridges into downtown Memphis. Then the world changes. The first jolt comes like a low growl, dishes rattling, glass humming in their frames. Seconds later, a violent, upward shock hurls the ground like a wave. Bridges sway as if made of rope. Pavement splits like torn paper. This is what a magnitude 7.7 earthquake would look like if the new Madrid Fault struck today. According to FEMA's national simulation, catastrophic shaking would engulf at least 7 states at once: Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Mississippi, and Indiana. Downtown Memphis would collapse into chaos. Brick buildings crumble, gas lines rupture, fires spread unchecked, cellular networks fail. The Mississippi River bridges, vital to the U.S. supply chain, twist and crack, isolating entire communities. Upstream, the Gateway Arch in St. Louis sways several feet side to side. Historic riverfront districts crumble into dust. Power plants near the river shut down automatically as sensors detect ground failure. And across the Midwest, the shaking continues. Not for seconds, but for nearly 4 minutes. For anyone inside, it would feel endless. Then, the aftershocks begin, thousands of them rumbling for weeks, some powerful enough to topple what little remains standing. Power grids across multiple states would fail. Hospitals would overflow. The Mississippi itself would transform. Sand boils and mud volcanoes bursting from the ground, releasing trapped groundwater like geysers. Experts estimate that more than 80,000 people could be killed or injured, and over 2 million displaced. The economic toll? Possibly over $30 billion, making it the most expensive natural disaster in U.S. history. But the cruelest part isn't just the destruction, it's the lack of preparation. Unlike California, the Midwest has no major earthquake early warning system, no strict seismic building codes, and few contingency plans. For most residents, the idea of a major quake isn't even on their radar until the ground starts to move. When the river turned to a wave. Most people think tsunamis belong to the ocean. But in 1811 and 1812, witnesses described something else, an inland version of the impossible. The Mississippi River itself formed waves, surging, churning, even reversing direction for minutes at a time. Boats were thrown onto the shore. Whole islands vanished. Some accounts describe the riverbed splitting open, swallowing water, and then exploding it back out again. If a quake of that power struck today, the consequences would be catastrophic, because the Mississippi is no longer a frontier river. It's an industrial artery, lined with cities, refineries, and fuel depots. Ports from St. Louis to New Orleans handle nearly 500 million tons of cargo every year. A massive inland surge would rip through docks, tear apart levees, and toss tugboats onto land. Pipelines buried under the riverbed could rupture, igniting fires that spread across the surface. And liquefaction, the process where solid ground temporarily turns to liquid, could swallow entire neighborhoods, just as it did 2 centuries ago. But there's another danger few talk about, the chain reaction. If bridges, rail lines, or pipelines were severed here, the effect would ripple across half the country. The Mississippi isn't just a river, it's America's spinal cord. It carries fuel, food, and cargo that sustain the nation's economy. One major rupture here wouldn't just devastate local towns. It would choke the national supply chain, cutting off the heartland from both coasts. A single event could paralyze the economy, disrupt power grids, and send shockwaves through global trade, all triggered by a fault most Americans don't even know exists. The uncomfortable truth: the new Madrid Fault doesn't strike often. But when it does, it doesn't whisper. It reshapes the continent. From skyscrapers in St. Louis to riverboats on the Mississippi, the shaking won't just rattle windows. It will test everything we've built: our bridges, our cities, our resilience. The hardest truth? We're not ready. Thousands of critical structures, schools, hospitals, power stations, were built without major seismic protections. Many rest directly on top of ancient fault lines. Even the soft soils of the region, rich with sediment from the Mississippi, would amplify shaking instead of absorbing it. Scientists are racing to model what's next. GPS data shows the crust here is still shifting, millimeter by millimeter, relentlessly. And history warns us that silence doesn't last forever. The last time the new Madrid Fault broke loose, the land was rearranged. The river reversed. The earth itself changed shape. If it happens again, whether tomorrow or 50 years from now, it could rival the costliest natural disasters in American history, and it will come without warning. So the question isn't if, it's when. A question for the heartland. What would you do if the ground began to move beneath you right now? Would your home stand? Would your city survive? Most people in the Midwest never ask those questions. But maybe it's time they should, because the new Madrid Fault doesn't care about time zones or borders. It's a sleeping scar in the center of the nation, patient, powerful, and inevitable. And when it wakes again, it won't just shake the land. It'll shake our understanding of what earthquake country really means. So as we go about our quiet Midwestern days, as children play in backyards and barges hum down the river, the ground beneath us remembers, and somewhere, deep below, the dragon stirs. If you found this story eye-opening, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you believe America's next great earthquake will strike the West Coast, or rise again from right here in the heart of the country? Make sure you're subscribed, because next time, we're diving even deeper into the mysteries hidden beneath our feet.